Welcome to the African News Review podcast, where we cut through the noise and get to the truth. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and each week we are here to challenge the biases, prejudices, and misinformation in the Western press about Africa. Using historical context and contemporary insights, we set the record straight and reclaim the narrative. Tune in every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we uncover the real stories and reshape the conversations about Africa. This is the African News Review podcast, reclaiming Africa's narrative, one story at a time. Yes, greetings. First things first, your host Adesoji Iginla, and welcome to another episode of African News Review. Unfortunately, Brother Milton is under the weather and he sends his regards. He will be with us next week, all things being equal. But we have a guest who will be joining us shortly. But before the guest arrive, I will take us through the first story. Again, welcome to African News Review, a news program where we look at Africa in the Western press and break and deconstruct the story, as it were, so that we see what sort of slant is involved in how we're narrated to the world. Without further ado, the first story of the day comes from The Economist, and regular viewers of this program will not be a stranger to its slant when it comes to news telling. And so the headline reads, Meet Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso's retro-revolutionary. Africa's youngest leader is the face of the continent's changing geopolitics. The story was filed on April 10, 2025, and it's credited to the capital city of Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou. And it starts. It says, 4 decades ago, a 34-year-old army captain from Burkina Faso stood before the UN Secretary-General Assembly and demanded a new world order. The speech, which was watched eagerly by young people across West Africa, heralded the birth of a revolutionary icon, sometimes called Africa's Che Guevara. Back home, there was Thomas Sankara, who had seized power in a coup the previous year, that is August 4, 1983, and had embarked on a radical program of national reliance. On the global stage, he sought to anoint Burkina Faso as the third world's vanguard, as the America's ambassador to the UN wrote. Before we delve into that, it's important to put into context why this slanting story. First and foremost, The Economist is known as the Empire's magazine, founded in 1843. It's now owned by a conglomerate of private investors, most of which are people who have vested interest in the economic well-being or lack thereof on the continent. The gentleman they referred to 4 decades ago on the UN, who was said to address the UN, was none other than Thomas Sankara. Here I hold a picture, and his opening gambit on that stage was, I come here from a country whose 7 million children, women, and men refuse to die from ignorance. Let's hold that word, ignorance, hunger, and thirst any longer. My aspiration is to speak on behalf of my people and on behalf of the disinherited of the world, and to state the reasons for our revolt. Now, why is that important in the context of Ibrahim Traore? Ibrahim Traore at the moment seems to be the face of the youth of Africa in terms of leadership, of course. Bearing in mind the countries around him, with the exception of Assimi Goïta in Mali and the Chadian president, Derby's son, the leader in Niger, 3 of which now form the Association of Economic States in Sahel, otherwise, shortly abbreviated as A. Why is the framing of Traore important at this point in time? Traore has been exceptionally good at conveying his message, which is that the resources of Africa, or more especially the resources of Burkina Faso here, which is mostly gold, will be used as a bedrock of the economy of Burkina Faso. And why is that important? That's important because 27 years prior to him being the president of Burkina Faso, you had the government of Blaise Compaoré, who happened to have been the ones that the West used, specifically France here, used to assassinate Thomas Sankara. He's been formally charged, brought, and found guilty, but he lives in absentia in Côte d'Ivoire, next door, a bastion of French influence. Now, in the news magazine here, it writes, Sankara was assassinated by his army colleagues. You notice they just said his army colleagues and left out the bit that those army colleagues were actually pushed and buoyed by Western influence. So anyone reading or picking this up later in the years, far away from this recounted history, would not see that Western influence, but would just think it is how we call it, black on black violence. Or better still, how we've been framed in the Western press. That is just what Africans do. They set upon each other without, putting into context that those army colleagues were motivated by not just greed, but also they were buoyed by external influence to go about what it is they did. And he continues, but his spirit lives on in Burkina Faso's latest military leader, Ibrahim Traore, an army captain who took power in a coup in 2022 at the age of 34. At home, Mr. Traore is trying to stem the spread of jihadist insurgency while reviving Sankara's autocratic economic policy in what he calls a progressive popular revolution. Again, let's put into context. When you say he's trying to stem the spread of jihadist insurgency, there was no insurgency prior to 2011. And anyone who pays close attention to the African continent will know there was a seismic event in 2011. And that was the overthrow of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. With his overthrow, what then happened was arms became widespread in that neck of the woods, many of which are now also being used in the atrocities being carried out in Darfur. So it is not without basis that the sudden rise of jihadist insurgency in Burkina Faso was, at that particular point in time, was not only coincidental, but one would argue was actually engineered to be the case. And why? Because Mr. Traore in that timeline also engendered the expulsion of the French from Burkina Faso, subsequently Mali, and we saw the colonial deck of cards start tumbling down in countries, one country after the other. So it's also funny that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have a problem with insurgency. And so anyone paying close attention again will notice that pattern. And then you begin to see, if you've studied your history books, that anywhere you tend to tell the previous colonial masters or imperialists as they were, that no means no, you can be rest assured that you are not going to have a peaceful rest. So I continue. Abroad, he has become one of Africa's most prominent champions of a multipolar world. And in the face of a tripartite alliance of Sahel states, AES, an anti-Western regional bloc formed with neighboring Mali and Niger. You notice the use of anti-Western regional bloc. So the question then lies, why is it anti-Western? When Thomas Sankara was in power in the 80s, on assumption of power, Burkina Faso then was considered one of the poorest in terms of life expectancies, education, and what have you in the world. In fact, 70% of its food needs were provided by Western agencies. And so Sankara set about redressing that balance. And the first question he posed was, what is it about this Western, especially the likes of your World Bank, IMF, and even the UN that have been in Africa? And the question was, could you show me one success story since you guys have been here for that period of time? And because that answer meant a loud silence, Sankara asked all of them to leave, the IMF, the World Bank, and the UN. And he set about redressing that imbalance in terms of requirements within the African polity, especially with regards to Burkina Faso. And the first thing he said was, the naming of the country, which is Upper Volta, means no one claims allegiance to a space that they cannot exactly refer to. And so what did he do? Then went about renaming the country. He renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso. What does Burkina Faso mean? Burkina Faso is a combination of two of the main languages within the country, which meant the land of the upright people. And immediately people, bought into the idea that, yes, we are a land of upright people. And immediately started redressing some imperialist legacies, which was the giving of land to the elites who clearly don't use the land, but other than rent said land to peasants who will then farm and then bring tributary at the end of the day to the lords, as it were. And so one of the redresses was that will then give the power back to the peasants, taking the powers from the landed gents or landed elites, as it were. And once that happened, people quadrupled their output in terms of manpower and resources. Within a space of 3 years, Burkina Faso went from a largely dependent economy in terms of providing food and resources to actually producing the food it needs and exporting much more outside to the world. So the question then is, why is it that all of a sudden the economist is thinking that Traore is both a rehash or a paper version of Sankara? What is it about Traore that all of a sudden made them take notice of his movement? He has also, bearing in mind, I'll just add this quickly, that he has also suffered attempts on his life similar to the number, if not more, in a shorter space of time than Sankara that he's been, compared with. And the last, before I welcome my guest, is the fact that Sankara will often say something. He said, if you cannot feed yourself as a body of people, those who feed you will control you.
Absolutely.
And so the same thing is what Traore is also saying. We are going to control our resources, because if we control our resources, we control our destiny. And to imperialists, this is a very dangerous trend, especially in light of his age. Because that is another thing. While Sankara was in power, most of the leaders around him were of an older generation. And so the key thing they made sure of was anytime he visited their countries, they never allowed him to speak to the youths. So welcome, Sister Aya. You all know her from our time together on the Women and Resistance podcast. And welcome, sister. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad that I was able to join you into, I'm not sure which topics you already covered because I was finishing another interview. Apologies to your guests, but I'm glad I got in on this particular topic because just reading this article, I'm like, wait a second. I had to keep going back up like, what? Who published this? It seemed like something like a high schooler with very little experience who was maybe using Google or ChatGPT threw together. The biases built into the writing were quite astonishing if you are someone who has any idea of the history of this place, or if you're someone who touts sovereignty for any other country. Why would this country and these people not deserve to determine their own destiny? So, yeah, just reading through some of it, I kept going back like, The Economist, really? Did anybody vet this? Like, what is the agenda here? But it definitely was not unbiased.
Okay, so here is, for those who are probably just joining us for the first time, welcome again, and thank you for joining us. It's important to put the editorial mindset of The Economist into order. And that is, The Economist is largely a globalization kind of mindset. They've got a globalized mindset, which is they're largely imperial. It's business.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's call it what it is. They're an imperialist.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It's an imperialist rag. So what it tries to do most of the time is it writes its articles with a very witty slant, almost benign. Or if you study history, you know that no one writes, if it's one thing that the West doesn't do, it's waste ink or waste words. Every word in an article is clearly placed for a reason to either do what you said you did earlier, which is scroll back up to make sure that, did I get what? I mean, for the non-curious reader, you probably just read it and think nothing of it. But it's over time, drip, 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 you begin to understand that this thing is not smoke without fire. I will just read another part.
I just identify a couple of things based on what you're saying there. It starts with 4 decades ago, a 34-year-old Army captain. Okay, so Economists, largely an audience that considers themselves democratic.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So that first sentence, Army captain, it's an undemocratic state, blah, 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 blah. 34 years old, emphasizing youth. Although here in the U.S. where I live, the Constitution says you can be president at 35. So, why are you even emphasizing that? But then it goes on to talk about, of course, someone who had seized power. Sankara had seized power in a coup before. So these are all different ways to undermine it. And then assassinated by his army colleagues. And then lives on in Burkina Faso's latest military ruler. Meanwhile, let's just be very clear. The United States of America spends more on military, paraphernalia, whatever, their defense, all of that. They spend more in 1 year than the rest of, I think I heard, the other 26 industrialized countries combined. So when you're pointing out someone else is a military ruler, whatever, the United States of America may not call itself that, but my goodness.
Its projection to the world is.
And then it continues, as with his fellow military leaders in the Sahel. I mean, so you just kind of see how this is not a democratic state and this is this, so they need us. They need us to come in and tell them how to rule. But anyway, carry on with the point you were going to make.
Okay, so I was just going to point out this part. Abroad, he has become one of Africa's most prominent champions of a multipolar world and the face of a tripartite alliance of Sahel states, an anti-Western regional bloc formed with the neighboring...
Why anti-Western?
Because that's the standard.
But that's not how they describe themselves. That's how you're defining them. They're seeking sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you happen to be Western but again, isn't Russia in the West? But anyway, I digress. My point is, again, the built-in biases.
Just taking a quick break here on the African News Review podcast, but don't go anywhere. If you're enjoying our deep dive into the real stories behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we're here to debunk the myths and bring you the truth about Africa. Want to help spread the word? Share this podcast with your friends and leave us a review. It goes a long way in helping others discover the real Africa. Without further ado, let's get back to setting the record straight. I'll continue. And with his fellow military leaders in the Sahel, Mr. Traore's overriding priority is to curb the spread of jihadism by military means, refusing any dialogue with the militants. That last line, when was the time that the Americans talked to anyone they were fighting against?
We don't negotiate with terrorists. That's the party line in the United States of America.
But you are supposed to do that. I mean, you see, this is why this program is very important, because sometimes we read this literature and not pay heed. Like I said earlier, they don't waste words. Words placed wherever in the article are placed there for a reason, so that it registers.
So, for instance, calling him Mr. Traore, he's captain.
He's Captain Traore.
But we're not going to add any value to
legitimacy
who he is. Yes,
to him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So let's just finish this up. So it continues. Almost 2 years after an attempted coup prompted Mr. Traore to purge the army, the security apparatus seemed to be under his thumb. Critics or Western-backed enemies, you see, they put enemies in inverted commas, as Mr. Traore calls them, are either thrown in jail or sent to the front in a battle against jihadis. He is careful to cultivate his image. On billboards across Ouagadougou, he is shown opening factories and meeting foreign dignitaries. At the inauguration of Ghana's president in January, Mr. Traore appears bearing a sidearm along with his signature red beret and military gloves, as was greeted with loud cheers. Enter the buzzword, Russia, which dispatched military advisors to Ouagadougou shortly after he took power, may have helped boost his star appeal. The Africa Institute, a Kremlin-backed media outlet, has made Burkina Faso the focus of its soft power efforts in the region, explained Ulf Lansing, an expert on the Sahel region at the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Germany. Just focus on this green bit here. Tell me what jumps out at you.
You mean the African Initiative, a Kremlin-linked...
No, prior to that, he's careful to cultivate his image.
Yeah.
On billboards across Ouagadougou, he's shown opening factories and meeting foreign dignitaries. So at the inauguration of Ghana's president, Mr. Traore appears bearing a sidearm along with his signature red beret and military gloves, and was greeted with loud cheers. So what they're essentially saying here is, it's basically propaganda. He's not as popular as he think he is. The billboards, the meeting foreign dignitaries is for show. When he went to Ghana, is basically projecting that same thing abroad. So this guy is nothing more than a stooge.
But here's the thing is, what stands out for me in reading that is the fact that we, in their eyes, if we talk about the white gaze, are not human. And so how dare, is it possible that he's doing anything worthy of, in their words, star appeal? Is it possible that he actually cares about his people and is doing the work? No, you guys can do your pomp and pageantry on the West and propel yourselves and have all your ads and all of that, and that's perfectly fine. But should this African leader do this, Mr. Traore, not captain, then there's got to be something suspect, and he has to be a stooge, like he said, backed by someone else, because we are incapable of independent thought. Bottom line is Africa has to be ruled by others. And hey, do you want it ruled by Russia or by us? Because they clearly cannot make decisions on their own, at least not logical choices on their own. It's the condescension for me. Because at the same time, at no point did they say the economists or the economist, Western propaganda-backed initiative, but you label everything else to delegitimize it so that you look better. Exactly. That he's Kremlin linked. Well, what are you linked to, The Economist? Which imperialist are you linked to? What's your agenda while you're questioning other people's? Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously he's still living with us, so you can basically see everything he's doing in real time. But
He actually has, I think the last time I went to check, there've been over 18 assassination attempts against him. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. In comparison to Thomas Sankara, who is compared to, in a very short amount of time, he staggered more attempts than Sankara. Sankara was 6. It was the sixth one that they got him. And even that, he could have avoided that. He was just adamant that the person fingered would not have touched him. And that was it.
Traore was smart enough to go purge some people out.
Exactly.
Once he reckoned, because I think they'd been offered $5 million or something like that to kill him. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So for those who might want to read more with regards to Thomas Sankara, you can get his book, Thomas Sankara Speaks. But there is one key thing here about Sankara. He was asked that, what makes you tick? He said, well, to lead in Africa, you need a certain amount of madness, without which you can be rest assured you're not going to achieve anything. And that certain amount of madness formed the bedrock of another book, as you can see. That's his quote, right? A certain amount of madness. So this is by, what's her name? Amber Murray. So a certain amount of madness, the lives and politics and legacy of Thomas Sankara. So, and the reason we do this is it's important to not just read the newspapers of time, but also because, again, they say newspaper are the first drafts of history. Now, this is a first draft of history now, but it's touching back on something that has happened prior. So you have to be able to connect the dots in order to be able to get a full understanding of what it is you're looking at, rather than just, go out there and start repeating the same. Oh, by the way, I read in the Economist, they said this guy was that, that kind of thing. You're able to offer a deeper dive, not a superfluous understanding of what the real matters is. So that said, again, welcome, sister. And we're happy that you can join us. It's always a pleasure. This is not your first rodeo here. So you know what obtains. And again, to those who are just joining us, Brother Milton is under the weather. He promises to join us. He might be actually watching this as we speak. And so, Brother Milton, get well quick. Yeah. And so we continue. So for our next story, we go to The Guardian. And the story comes from Kenya. And it's about, again, foreign intervention. So the story reads, Defense Secretary meets family of Kenyan woman allegedly killed by British soldiers. Relatives of Agnes Wanjiru said 13-year fight for justice has taken heavy toll after meeting with John Healey. John Healey is the Defense Secretary of the United Kingdom. So the family of a Kenyan woman who was allegedly killed by British soldiers have said their 13-year fight for justice has taken a heavy toll, and they have been offered too many empty promises after a meeting with the Defense Secretary. Agnes Wanjiru was 21 when she disappeared in March 2012. She was last seen in the company of British soldiers in a bar in a hotel in Nanyuki, a town in eastern Kenya, where the British have a military base called Batuk. Her body was found 2 months later, stuffed inside a septic tank at the Lions Court Hotel. 6 years ago, an inquest in Kenya found she had been murdered by one or more British soldiers. In 2021, a suspect was named by several soldiers who at the time were attached to the Duke of Lancaster Regiment, with one providing startling testimony in which he claimed that the killer, a fellow soldier, had confessed to him on the night and showed him Wanjiru's body in the septic tank. Your initial thoughts?
So, I'm so righteously indignant right now. Wait a second. Go back to the very top. The heading.
Okay. So the heading reads, Defense Secretary meets family of Kenyan woman allegedly killed by
allegedly. But then you go down further in the article and it says that the inquest concluded that she was killed by military personnel. So even just the title, it could have been written in many different ways. Yes, there has not been a court hearing yet, and no one has been officially charged. But when you first put it in there, you're immediately throwing doubt on it. But as you read through the whole thing, it's like, yeah, she was last with your soldiers. One of your soldiers actually is saying, hey, not only did someone confess, they showed me the body. You had an inquest that concluded that she was unlawfully killed by British military personnel. And then nothing has happened in 13 years. I mean, here in the United States of America, that alone, without going to criminal court, that's a civil case. That's millions of dollars paid out. That's a settlement. We're not even getting past like 3 months conversation on this, just based on what's in this article alone. And so the fact that, again, this is something that is being drawn out comes back to the point of we're not human in their eyes. Just imagine that this was a reverse case where there were Kenyans living in Britain and a precious white, blonde, blue-eyed woman was last seen in the company of these black, dark Kenyan men. And then she disappears and her body's found in a septic tank. Think about the violence to this woman, the lingering trauma for her family to find, first of all, that someone so young dies, but then dies under these kind of horrific circumstances. And then one of the Kenyan officers says, yes, my brother admitted to this and showed me the body. And 13 years later, what will be happening exactly? So it's us making sure that we are always centering our humanity and not buying into the ways that these people constantly, in all their interactions with us and how they report on it, our lives don't matter.
Yes. There is, you were going to say?
No, please carry on.
Okay, so here is where it even gets much more sticky. Most of the foreign military agreements in Africa come loaded with something called the Status of Forces Agreement.
Yes.
You know what that means?
Yes.
That means they're shielded from prosecution if they commit any crime in the host country.
So, brother, let's take it historically. If you go back before now, when you go back to when the colonizers were showing up and setting up their encampments and so on, I can speak directly to that in the area of Bwani and Opobo. It was in their agreement. If a white man does anything, we white people will be the ones to deal with him. You cannot haul them before your own judicial system. But if one of you do anything against us, you are tried by us as well. So this goes back centuries. And because we don't study our history, we refuse to learn, and we keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Yes. So now the 13-year thing is based on this. And so it's important to also add that how could it possibly be much more important for a base in your country to exist and your people are being defiled? I repeat, why is it possible that you're the leader of a country and this story is in there, is in the public press, not, being whispered privately? This is an investigation. That means people were interviewed. Where was the government of Kenya when these soldiers were being interviewed?
Well, I'll tell you what they're doing now. They're using taxpayers' money to fly to the UK under the guise of we're investigating it, if you continue to read the article. But here's the deal when you bring that up. First and foremost, why is the British Army training? Why does the British have an army training unit in Kenya to begin with? So to the extent that they even have a title, Batuk. Why are they there? And what are they offering Kenya? That's one. Second question. From 1983 to 2003, to over just that 20-year period, there were over 200 cases of rape involving British soldiers stationed in Kenya. No prosecutions, no comprehensive investigations. But we see the children. These children are often ostracized because the mothers are ostracized from their families. The children are abandoned. They're called derogatory names because they're offspring of rapes. Some of the girls raped were as young as 10 and 12 years old. And when we talk about sovereignty, ask, Ruto, why are you silent on this? Because any truly sovereign nation would not still be, well, let's still talk about it. What else is there to talk about? And by the way, I would like to call her name Agnes Wanjiru. Agnes Wanjiru, 21 years old, found dead in a septic tank. We lift up your name.
Yeah. Okay. And may she rest well with the ancestors.
May she come back and rain down hellfire. I'm just saying. We're not resting in peace. We're coming back. There will be retribution.
There should be. I mean,
absolutely.
If you have, I'm sure there are lawyers who will take the case pro bono here and pull them up on what it were. So for our next story, we go to the Financial Times, the money paper.
Money.
And this is where we call the name of your president. And the title reads...
Who's president? Not mine.
The title reads, South Africa ANC calls Trump's Afrikaner refugee plan madness. Main party in governing coalition dismisses U.S. accusation of white minority oppression. And you can see a couple of Afrikaners there who are clearly not pleased.
Listen, those people look like they took that picture in Texas. I'm telling you the truth. This looks like a Klan rally just an hour and a half from where I live. Same look. Same, my gene pool has been watered down.
Yes. So, we go on. It says, and the news was filed in by Rob Rose and Monica Park in Johannesburg. It reads, South Africa's African National Congress has labeled a plan by Trump administration to build refugee centers for white Afrikaners as madness in its latest twist of a deepening diplomatic crisis between the two countries. People in South Africa with knowledge of the Trump's administration plans told Financial Times that they have met State Department officials in recent weeks who were determined to bring Afrikaners to the U.S. as refugees. They were very serious about it. They want to see Africans Afrikaners on plane said one more thing. Under a project called Mission South Africa, the Trump administration has begun turning empty office spaces in the center of Pretoria, which is the capital of South Africa, into temporary housing for Afrikaners, refugees, according to documents obtained by the New York Times. The newspaper said U.S. has received 8,200 refugee requests and identified 100 Afrikaners who could be given asylum. Afrikaans, a white minority group who trace their roots to 17th century Dutch settlers, led a white nationalist government that implemented apartheid after the Second World War and today constitutes less than 5% of the country's population. Your initial thoughts?
Let them go. Kick them out. Take our land back. Go. Gas up the planes. Go. Come to the U.S. So listen, the U.S. isn't doing anything that they haven't done before when they've tried to make this a white nation. It failed before. It's going to fail again. The country is mostly sitting on the land of brown and indigenous people anyway. And we are having more babies than they are and will always be. These people are a minority in the entire world. Now, we didn't play that race card. They played it. We would have been content with all of us just being human, but they have to oppress everybody else, right? So for people who are used to oppressing others, any form of equality feels like oppression to them. So please file your papers, come to the U.S., and what you're going to do is, as we say here, F around and find out, because African Americans, indigenous people, Hispanics in the United States of America are not going to just lay down and play dead. It didn't happen before. It's not going to happen now. I don't know how long the struggle is going to be. But if you think you're going to come here and make this a white enclave, you're going to find out something different. That's one of the reasons now that in the United States of America, they're actually making moves to try and limit the number of Black and brown people that join the army. Because we have so many veterans who are Black and brown. You think white people are armed, and yes, you guys are numerically the majority at this time, but you do not understand what it looks like to fight with the people when their backs are up against the wall. So what I'm saying is, leave South Africa, and we're not letting you take anything with you. We're freezing all your accounts. The land is ours, all of that. Go ahead, file asylum, and go stay with Trump and see how that works out for you. That's how I feel, my initial sense of it.
Okay, so there was one thing that jumped out in the initial 2 paragraphs that we read. 3 paragraphs.
And someone said in the chat that it's not the rich landowners that are coming. All of you go. We're going to kick all of you out. Imagine having a settler community in my own country that I'm banned from. And then you're going to turn around and say, you're the ones that are being victimized? And then you're going to talk about we're facing racial discrimination? You freaking like, how ahistorical is that? Who is publishing this crap?
This is Financial Times, the money paper.
Exactly. The imperialist paper. Can we call them what they are?
Yeah,
No.
founded 1888, owned by the Nikkei Industrial Average.
There you go.
Japan, essentially money paper. Wherever money goes or money moves, they have to follow it. And so, because again, it's tied to access to resources, they have to report on it. And so there was one thing that jumped out. The question of land was not mentioned in the first 3 paragraphs. Yeah, it wasn't mentioned. The fact that 8% of the population owns 70% of the arable land in South Africa, all down to the 1913 Native Land Act,
Yes,
which essentially said that if you are not European descent, you have to move to a barren land that was set up, or as they were then called Batush land. This was land that you had to break rock.
Yes.
So,
and as of 2017, 72% of all agricultural land remained in white hands. That's agricultural land. We're not talking about all the real estate and so on and so forth. When they're talking about empty buildings in Pretoria, that's probably white-owned buildings that the U.S. government is now using our taxpayer money to pay some racist over there. You're filing for asylum. Yeah, let's kick them all out.
Okay, I'll continue one more part there. And so it goes on. Even while the U.S. clamps down on asylum seekers globally, President Donald Trump and his South African-born advisors, the billionaire Elon Musk, have seized on accusations that the Afrikaners became an oppressed minority under a democratic multiracial government after apartheid fell 30 years ago and now need a haven. On Tuesday, the ANC, the largest party in South Africa's coalition government, reacted. Now, there's a word. Reacted angrily to the reports. So when Black people react to something, there has to be a qualifier.
Uh-huh.
This is just madness that you can build refugee centers in a country as peaceful as South Africa and claim that people are subjected to genocide. The ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbola, said at a media briefing, the real genocide is happening there in the Middle East. That is what needs to be curtailed. Okay?
So, I do appreciate our brother pointing out, I do appreciate the representative pointing out the situation in Gaza. And of course, we know that South Africa is under attack because they chose to go against an ally of the United States of America in filing the charges that they did in the International Court of Justice.
Yeah.
Having said that, again, I'm reminded of Toni Morrison's words in terms of the white gaze, because even this sentence that you can build refugee centers in a country as peaceful as South Africa. Peaceful for whom? Who are you pandering to? What are you projecting here? Because the vast majority of South Africans are not experiencing peace. They're experiencing economic turmoil. They are still experiencing centuries of being disenfranchised. They don't have access to quality education or health. So peaceful as defined by what? And the people who have prevented your country from having peace are the very people who committed genocide against your people and are now crying wolf. So I guess I would have put it differently. But I, again, understand why, though I don't agree with it, why our people continue to try to pander to folk who have made it very clear that they do not see and do not respect your humanity. But South Africa is not peaceful for the average South African. People are catching hell. And a lot of that hell is as a result of what these damn Dutch settlers, and again, how we fantasize these words. Dutch settlers? No, these were rapists, murderers, agents of genocide who left their countries, came with weapons, and subdued a group of people who were not expecting that. And then set up laws to ensure their power forever and ever. How do you say you are 5% of the population, you get 92% of the land? So even just calling them settlers, it sounds so benign. They were not settlers. They were agents. They were murderers. They were agents of chaos. Call them what they are, imperialists. And their descendants hang on there thinking that they're better than other people and thinking that that gives them right to land and resources. Go with Trump, go with Elon Musk, and leave all of our land and our minerals and our resources, and don't come back. Well, I don't know how else to say it.
There is not more to add to that. So, I suppose there's nothing else to say in that we've been sort of curated to think if they're happy, then we should be happy. So when you pointed out that sentence, peaceful. So if it's peaceful for them, then surely it's peaceful for you, the locals. Who cares about how you feel? So you can't help but wonder that, those people have Even in the United States, I mean, let's come on to the United States for a reason. When the screaming was, oh, this is woke, all this new recounting of history will make our kids uncomfortable. Why does race have to be at the center of everything? You're forgetting that the bedrock of the entire system is race-based, is race-based.
And you created that deck of cards. We didn't. When they say you're playing the race card, no, you created the whole deck. And you've been playing it. And when I call you out on it, now you want to cry reverse discrimination. What's really important at Adesoji is that there's no way, with all of these stories that you brought up today, and I don't know if you have any others that we're supposed to discuss, but there's no way that we talk about true liberation in Africa if we do not get our land and our resources back, and if we're not in control of them. Everything else that we're addressing comes back to who is in control of our land and our resources.
Correct.
And as long as we don't have control over it, we continue to be beggars. We continue to be at the whim of these people. And so what brought, in addition to, filing the charges against Israel and that bringing more attention to South Africa, the other issue with Trump, even in his first term, was, they're trying to take land away from the white people. It wasn't your land. If you come and you steal my stuff, I don't care if you've now had use of it for 50 years, 100 years, 500 years. If I'm magnanimous, I'll let you keep the whatever interest you've made off of it, but give me back my land. And me asking for it does not now make me the person in the wrong who has to negotiate with you. So when you look at Zimbabwe negotiating to pay thieves.
That's the next story.
Okay, I'm gonna let that be then. Let's go on.
That's the next story. Yeah, so land. Okay, so let's just set a context. When colonialism hit Africa, there is a running theme. If you look, Kenya, Uganda, Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Zambia, South Africa, Botswana, Namibia.
And before you make your point, can I just say this for anybody who was like, how is he pulling that up? Go and buy his book. You need to put the link in the chat, because you buy his book, you buy Adesoji's book, you will know a little bit, and you know a lot more than most people about every single country on the continent of Africa. That's why he was able to list it off that way, because brother does the work. So hopefully you put it in the link so people can go buy that book and share it with your children and grandchildren and cousins and nephews and everybody. They need to know Africa. Please, yeah, carry on,
Yes,
sir.
we do. Yes, we do. So all of those countries that Ford mentioned have one running thread with them. It's that they all had white settler colonies.
And white murderers colonies.
So, okay, I repeat again. They all had a white settler colonies. Now, some might ask, but why just those places? The land there was fertile. And so when they came in, they came under the theme Terra Nobis.
And the temperature was a little bit more temperate for them too.
For them. So it was akin to what they obtained in Europe. You're talking about the highlands, the story we did the week before with Sister Wangari Maathai, where not only did they steal the place, they also renamed it White Highlands. So that's in Kenya. So the next story we're going to runs with that theme, and this is Zimbabwe. Then, I can't even call it that name, but we have to give it context. So I'm going to be forced to name that place. Okay.
Rhodesia.
So this story comes from the BBC, and it's titled Zimbabwe Makes First Compensation Payments to White Farmers Over Land Grab. I repeat, Zimbabwe makes first compensation payments to white farmers over land grabs. The story is filed in by Shingai Nyoka for BBC News Harare. The payments Zimbabwe's government has announced an initial payout of 2.3 million to white farmers whose farms were seized under a controversial government program more than 2 decades ago. Do you want to say something?
Controversial? Was that in
Yes.
quotes? No?
Not in quotes.
So that's just a statement of fact.
It was a statement of fact because it was controversial.
Of course.
Do you want to say something about this before?
Carry on.
Okay. It is the first payment to be made under the 2020 compensation agreement signed between the state and local white farmers, in which Zimbabwe committed to pay $3.5 billion for seized farmland. Thousands of white farmers were forced from their land, often violently, between 2000 and 2001. Your initial thoughts before I lose my mind.
I lost my mind already. Again, it's so important that we put all of this into historical context. So let's talk a little bit about Zimbabwe. 1890, the British colonization begins in earnest. The British South Africa Company under Cecil Rhodes occupies Zimbabwe. Let's ask ourselves what occupies means. Okay, we can see in real time Gaza being occupied. What does that look like? It's not peaceful. Okay. White settlers, again, this terminology that sanitizes their murderous actions. White settlers are given large tracts of land, while Africans are forcibly displaced. Again, just words. But what do you mean? What does forcibly displaced mean? How many tens of thousands were killed? How many children died of starvation? You know, what does that mean? And that leads us to the first Chimurenga War, right? 1896 to 1897, where the Shona and the Ndebele peoples rose in resistance. Resistance to what? Land theft, forced labor. You steal my land, you displace me, and then you force me to serve on that land to pay taxes that you've imposed on me that I can't make on any land because I don't own anything, right? Now, I do want to take this moment to call up, women have featured prominently today. I don't know if it's because I'm your guest today, to call up a name of an ancestor, Mbuya Nehanda. And you say, who was she?
Yeah.
She was a revered spirit medium of the Shona people in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Believed to be possessed by the ancestral spirit of Nehanda, she was both a spiritual leader and a key figure in the first Chimurenga War against British colonization. She played a crucial role in galvanizing her people to resist the land dispossession, the forced labor, all the cultural destruction that was going on. And so when they were able, with their superior weapons, when they were able to put down the quote-unquote resistance, in other words, slaughter thousands and thousands of us, they captured her. They charged her with the murder of Native Commissioner Henry Pollard. So she gets charged with this one white man dies, regardless of how many of us you killed, because they're just, non-human. And they tortured her, but they wanted her to repent publicly because they could use that to subdue the other people as well. And she refused to. And so they hanged her. She was hung in 98. And her final words were, "My bones will rise again." This is one sister. I'm not saying rest in peace. She coming back in power. Her bones will rise. I don't know exactly how or when, and she might already be here right now. But when we talk about the absolute insult it is to our ancestors, that you come, kill us, take our land, completely change our trajectory, we will never know what we could have been absent these colonizers. and then you turn around and pay them for the right to your own land, and then some idiot calls it controversial that you're even going to do that. And mind you, while you're trying to take out money to pay them, why are you doing this? Because you need to get back in the good graces of the Western world so that you are again considered credit worthy, even though you already spend 97% of your GDP servicing loans. You want to now pay more money to these murderers for your own land so that you get back in the good graces to be able to borrow money from people. Make it make sense. Somebody help me, because I don't get it. And we can go on. We can go on with the history. The 1930 Land Apportionment Act, similar to the 1913 Act in South Africa, legalizes racial segregation of land. 50% of agricultural land is reserved only for the whites, again, settlers. Africans are confined to poor quality native reserves. What did they do to Native Americans in the United States of America? Same playbook. Then 1951, they had the Land Husbandry Act, increases state control over African agricultural practices, kicking out even more Africans from the little land they had. Then Ian Smith, white man, declares independence from Britain to block majority rule.
The rule. Yep.
So land reform is stalled and Africans are denied land and political rights. And by the way, you can't have any political rights if you don't have land rights, which led to the Second Chimurenga War. And the slogan was, the land is the economy and the economy is the land. Thousands again die. This war did bring some quote unquote international support for independence, but only so that they can come and control in a different way. Man, are you freaking kidding me? So yes, Mugabe launched this land seizure that was supposedly controversial, and the imperialists working in tandem collapsed food production. Because understand, it wasn't the white settlers who were working that land, it was still the black laborers. We could have still produced that food. So don't buy into the nonsense that these people put out here. But the food production suffers, economy collapses, you're now more vulnerable. We are going to ride in on a white horse and save you. Zimbabwe agrees to 3.5 billion compensation to white farmers and then starts to work out lease agreement with some of these farmers. We are crazy. And the spirit of Mbuya Nahanda is about to strike down some African leaders if they continue to make these kind of deals.
Okay. It's hard to top what you just did, but I'm gonna try.
Please do, sir.
The second Chimurenga that was led by Robert Mugabe, had two military leaders. So he was the political head, but he had two military leaders. One of the military leader was killed in a helicopter crash in Mozambique. His name is Thomas Sankara. The other one is named the Crocodile. He survived and he fought, and they won the independence. They won the battle on the field. They defeated not only the Ian Smith's army, but also the support from the British. Eventually, the British could not get weapons to them.
Because they're punks. Every time we resist, they're punks. We just need to resist. Okay, carry on.
It gets wilder.
It does.
So, bearing in mind, I said there were two military leaders, right? The military leader that led the other angle, nicknamed the Crocodile, would come around eventually to overthrow Robert Mugabe, and his name is Emmerson Mnangagwa. He's the current president of Zimbabwe. The thing you won on the battlefield, you're now handed out back with the stroke of a pen. And for people who want to read about it, although it's a very old book, you might be able to get it. I had to reach out to someone in Zimbabwe to get this. It's titled The Struggle for Zimbabwe, right? It's written by a very brilliant journalist. And the foreword is actually written by Robert Mugabe. So this was long before all of the political wrangling, so you understand the political philosophy. And the current president, Mananagwa, that's him there.
Easily we're co-opted. My aunt's husband was actually Nigeria's ambassador to Zimbabwe in the 80s. Yeah, that's another story for another day.
So when I read the story, and the worst part is this is even more where it gets mad. I would read the part, you will see what I'm referring to. It's that the payment announced will cover the first 378 farms of a total of 740 farms. These farms, speaking to someone born in Zimbabwe, are not small. They are not what you and I will call farms. These are cities. These are counties. Some of this stuff had made their way to the likes of Marks and Spencer's in London, Sainsbury's, the stuff that is gained from those. So what they're effectively saying is it's okay for the white farmer to get those crops to Sainsbury's, but you cannot do that. Because how dare you? You can work for us, but you can't make money off us. So there is one final part I wanted to, which is the painful bit where you talked about where they're going to get the money from. Where was it? It's somewhere where, oh my God, what's it? It's something to do with the fact how it's going to be paid for. Where is it? Wait a second. 1 second. Yes. The remainder will be paid through US dollar denominated treasury bonds. So you're going to use the wealth of the nation to compensate.
To invest in the US treasury bonds.
No, this is your US treasury bonds that you've paid for, that is giving you yields. So you are going to sell it to pay people who
so that they go further down, if you will. I just want to pull that part up for our listeners. Keep scrolling. Okay. President Emerson Mnangagwa, who replaced Mugabe in a 2017 coup, has sought to engage Western governments to restore ties. For what? Restore ties when you're now so destitute? For what? So that you have the honor of being able to continue to beg? Like for what? What is the mindset behind it? But then again, looking at history, in England, after they supposedly abolished slavery, England repaid quote-unquote slave owners.
In Haiti,
Haiti had to pay for the right to be independent. In the United States of America, Lincoln paid white slave owners for the loss of their property. So every turn, the evildoers get compensated while the true victims of the evil are left vulnerable so they can be victimized again. We have no intentions of ending this cycle. And I know that there's some people, and trust me, if you lived long enough, you are going to have people in your family from different backgrounds and ethnic groups. We've all mixed. When I go back and read Marimba Ani's Urugu, this notion that we are somehow at some point one day going to prove our humanity, either by breastfeeding white children or being so benevolent or marrying them or having children with them, that suddenly they will recognize, they know we're human or they wouldn't even have been doing all this stuff with us, but that they will see that equality, that they will be able to respect all of humanity, that they would not need to have this racialized oppression. The fact that we're going to do something to change it, I think is a fallacy. And we need to stop living along those lines. So the whole idea, I want to spend so much of my energy trying to build allyship If you want to be an ally, great, but I'm not wasting my energy on that. So rather than figuring out how with the money you have, you consolidate your resources, you figure out how to work with other African countries or other entities who are not against your interests. No, instead, we can't learn in a few years how to farm the land like we used to and feed ourselves. Instead, you sign on to this asinine agreement. It's really unfortunate.
To borrow money you don't have, to pay who don't like you,
to keep yourself further enslaved. Now, this is one place where I might have to agree with Kanye West. Slavery is a choice on this one point. On this one point, but it's not a choice that the average African is making. It's a choice that sold out African leaders are making. And perhaps if we can get Ayikwa Ama to do like a whole African tour and have a specific class for African leaders or aspiring African leaders, perhaps that will help us see things differently. Because now the path we're going down, we're not reading his books. The path we're going down is a path to destruction.
He has a book dedicated to the idea of leadership, remembering the dismembered continent.
Yes.
So, people can read it. Again, it goes back to why, if you fought for what you fought for and won it on the battlefield, why are you signing it away? Why? I don't get it. Is it, if anything, your comrades who lay down their lives, who are no longer with you, does that not mean anything to you?
So maybe the fight wasn't for the power of the people. It was really using that to ride to personal power.
Yeah.
Because and that's what we're seeing here in the United States of America. There are impoverished people who think Trump is for them. Trump rode their issues and their concerns and rode it to the White House for his personal power. Yeah, exactly right. It's like paying a robber because he broke into your house. And borrowing money to pay him. Borrowing the money to pay, telling him, apologizing, setting up a throne for the robber, and then paying them. Yes.
So again, this is why engaging with the press is very important, is that when they put this stuff out there is no pushback and for them, the moment it's quiet, for them it's tacit approval of what it is that the entire articles. So what I'll enjoin people do is go to those articles, share it, and even share this video to those share a similar outlook on things with regards to who you are. Don't give it to someone that don't care about it, because they're just gonna, share it. And the more you do, the more it comes to not just the leaders understanding, but also it's important that the youth be able to grab onto it and hold on to it. Because then they can then say, listen, that's old news. We're not doing that again. Because when you then elect your next set of leaders, what are you going to do on this matter? And then you can hold them to account. So
we absolutely need to be paying attention to the patterns. It's like when I play chess with my kids, they're better chess players than I am. And so they can anticipate certain things. They know, do this is typically what happens on all that. They kill me like that every time. And until I take the time to study the game and pay attention to the patterns, I will constantly be the one that they just play around with. And that's the same thing with Africa and Africans, wherever we are across the world. They're using the same playbook, the same tactics, and we keep not paying attention, it seems. And we're not teaching the next generation. We don't learn, and we don't remember the dismembered continent. We don't pass on that information. And so we don't anticipate what is happening here in the United States. Anyone who had studied Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction should have known it was about to happen. Every time Black people get ahead or look like we're getting ahead, there's a very significant white lash. We didn't plan for it. We were just celebrated that we had a Black president, and we didn't make any plans. And now it's like, but they never gave up, even after the Civil War in the United States. In the South, they've been fighting that war. And here in Texas, where I am, that's why I came in late. We were doing a podcast on the bills that are going through legislators right now. And so many of them are a return to Jim Crow in one way, shape, form, or the other. So we need to pay attention to these patterns. And I certainly encourage your listeners to please like, share, subscribe. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to weigh in on some of these topics today.
No, my pleasure. And for those of you who already know, Sister Aya and I do a podcast every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And this week, as part of continuation, we've done 10 exceptional women, and we're going to be putting those 10 exceptional women into conversation with each other. But the week after next will be the turn of Sister. You want to tell them who the sister is?
You do the honors. because you already have a crush on her and she's not even living. So you do the honors.
So we're going to be, yes. I like women who move stealthily. So she is Andre Boleyn. So just keep that name in your mind, Andre Boleyn. So if you are able to watch soundtrack to a coup d'etat, you will see this woman that we're talking about. Again, until next time. And again, thank you for standing in for Comrade Milton.
No, I could never stand in for Comrade Milton. No, sir. Not at all. That man is a legend. No, thank you for letting me even add my voice, but never stand in for Comrade Milton.
No, I'm sure he will. He'll be proud. He'll be proud that you did. You turned up.
Thank you.
And yes, thank you everyone from the bottom of my heart for turning up, engaging in the chat. It gives us food for thought. It's emboldening us to continue that we're on the right path. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And yes, until next week, Sister Aya.
Thank you. And let's fight. Resist.
Yes. Continue the fight. Fight is both intellectual and physical. Continue the fight. And until next time, it's good night for now. And see you the next time. Bye-bye. That's a wrap for this week on the African News Review podcast. We hope you are leaving with a clearer, more truthful picture of Africa. Remember, every story has another side, and we're here to uncover it. Don't forget to join us next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we continue to challenge the narratives and reclaim Africa's voice. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep seeing Africa for what it truly is.